Welcome to USIP ISIP, a weekly podcast with Northern Lights Winery founder Doug Bell, exploring the experiences from leaders in business, social media, and family. Now here's this week's exceptional guest.
Welcome to USIP ISIP. My name's Doug Bell, the host of the podcast, and I'm joined today by Zainab Nelson. And you are the president of Exposure Control, which is a industrial hygienist company that helps businesses become safer and comply with WCB regulations. Welcome today.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is such a fun opportunity because we met about a year and a half ago in a different setting during COVID times when we were talking about very different topics, and you were just getting started developing your business, which you now have taken on full-time. You've got a full-time employee and you're looking at bringing on more people. So you're exploding and congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been sort of a whirlwind. We've been super busy with working with a lot of our clients here in Northern British Columbia. And yeah, we're kind of spreading all over the place. So we're super excited. We need more people. So we're looking for the right people. In probably the next year, we're going to start hiring some people. So yeah.
Incredible. And I think the other thing is that many people probably don't know what it is you do. And we're going to jump into that really quickly. But first, take me back a little bit. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And what got you into industrial hygienist?
Yeah, it's such an interesting field. And I honestly don't even know how I got here. It was just sort of like a series of fortunate events. So I did grow up in Toronto. I essentially was a daughter to an immigrant family, right? I had pretty conservative Indian parents. They were, they really kind of focused myself and my brother on our studies, right? We spent a lot of time studying and, not necessarily very much time doing anything else, which I am grateful for. It got me to the place that I am here today. But yeah, I grew up in Toronto, well, at least the suburbs of Toronto in Markham, Ontario. I did my bachelor's of science in molecular biology and genetics. And, it kind of pigeonholed me into a place where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought at one point I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be like a dermatologist, a dentist. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I really liked science. So just kind of Googling on the internet, trying to figure out what can I do? And one of the programs that the University of Toronto had was a master's in public health. And it was for occupational and environmental health. And it kind of lined up with what I liked. It was about science, which I absolutely love. It was about working with people, and it was working at industrial facilities where I could potentially prevent disease and injury. So I got into the program. I did a year and a half of schooling at the University of Toronto, got my master's degree. And during that time, I had a co-op at a refinery in Southern Ontario for 4 months. It was an awesome experience, but holy moly, was it a lot of work. And then once I graduated, I had a couple job offers. One was in a little place called Prince George, BC. And I was like, you know what? Let me go and see what this is all about. My friend, she worked for the company at that time. She said it would be a really good opportunity to learn a whole bunch of stuff while I was there. So I packed my bags, moved from Toronto, Ontario to Prince George. I really only expected to stay here for like a year, 2 years max. And, 8 years later, I'm still here. And I'm starting to grow a business, which is something that I don't think I would have ever done in Toronto. It's the great part about living in Northern British Columbia. So
your story is very similar to many people's stories, especially in Canada, where we have such a robust population of first generation Canadians. coming from a background with parents as immigrants. And it is a different way than I grew up, right? Because my parents didn't have the same kind of background and understanding. But your parents, like many others, probably really wanted you to be an engineer or a doctor
Yeah.
or something like that. Did that influence you? And were they really supportive of you kind of moving in this different direction?
It's a good question. I think deep down inside, they obviously had ulterior motives for me, and they would have loved to see me as a doctor or something like that. But my brother, he kind of he I have an older brother, and he's 4 years older than me. He's the pharmacist, and sort of the golden child of the of the family. And they were like, you know what, actually, once we became adults, we had really good heart to heart conversations with them. And what they told us was, they essentially said, we came to Canada because we want you guys to pursue your dreams. We sacrificed our dreams for you guys to fulfill yours. And that was really sort of profound for us, that we were able to have that conversation with them and really understand why they did what they did. Because my dad and my mom, they didn't take high paying jobs. They could have made a lot more money back in India, but they decided to sacrifice their lives really for the benefit of us. So I really appreciated that for us. And one thing also that, at least in the culture that I've seen, that many of my friends that I grew up with, their parents were really focused on their kids, getting married, especially the daughters, especially someone in my shoes, get married, then figure out your life. That was the priority. And my parents really never pushed that on us, which again, I appreciate so much. It's just a different way of thinking. And yeah, that was kind of the steps that I took, and they allowed me to fulfill my dreams and move out to a different province. And they're so super happy for us now that we are starting to build this company. So
In a way, you are probably more so even than your brother, sorry, brother, but fulfilling their dreams, because you are doing the Canadian dream. You have your
yeah.
own company. You are an entrepreneur, and you're developing products and services for people that are going to help them and potentially even save lives. So there isn't very many more noble causes than that, for sure. And so, industrial hygienist, can you tell the listeners what it is exactly that you do?
Yeah, that's there's many different ways that people explain it. But the easiest way that I explain it, for anyone that kind of understands health and safety and environmental services, we are the health aspect of the health, safety, and environment. So safety professionals, they really focus on injuries and things that could hurt you, in the next minute, in the next hour, in the next day. Industrial hygienists and the realm of industrial hygiene, we want to protect workers from long-term exposures. So, things that may hurt you in a week, in a month, in a year, and then 30 to 40 years down the road. So we're super focused on prevention of occupational disease. The classic example for that is asbestos exposure and individuals who develop mesothelioma and lung cancer. So, something that we always tell the clients that we work with is a lot of the exposures that their workers may have while they're working at their in their work environment, they might not see the effects until 30, 40 years down the road. And, who really wants to live their retirement with a disease that they, was a result of their work environment? We really are hoping to prevent that. So.
When you were growing up and developing this interest, did you ever have any incidents, maybe with family or friends, or perhaps some deeper understanding or of this industry and being an industrial hygienist prior to getting into it, or was there another reason why you were so excited when you did find it?
One of the key examples that I can think of, and that sort of changed the way that I thought and the way that I wanted to work and have a fulfilling career, is to I actually, my mom at the time, like I mentioned, they kind of just worked with whatever jobs they could get. My mom only had a high school education. She didn't have post-secondary education. So there's a lot of manufacturing in Toronto. So she applied for this job actually at a cookie factory. and it was I think it was a Mr. Christie cookie factory right in the heart of downtown Toronto. And she came home sort of after her first day and was absolutely totally wiped. Like, she's like, this is the hardest job I've ever done. And she was on the manufacturing line. So what she had to do, and I'm sure they've automated it now, but what they had to do was they had to take the cookies that were coming out of the manufacturing line and actually box them. And, the manufacturing line was super, super quick, and she'd miss a lot of cookies and like a lot of them. And then she'd get yelled at for missing these cookies. And maybe at the time I didn't realize it. But she's like, this is not the job for me. I cannot do this. And the reason why I go back to this specific event is really they were trying to fit my mom to this job, and they shouldn't have done that. That company shouldn't have done that. They really should have tried to fit the job to her, because maybe she wasn't that quick. Maybe the ergonomics of putting the cookies in this box weren't perfect, and really everyone was kind of being challenged to do this, and there was a lot of high turnover in that type of environment. So it wasn't my mom. It was something that was going on in that facility that we could do better. Like, could this company do better and create better work environments for their company? So yeah, it kind of set me on a prevention. Like, can we prevent things like this from happening? And there was the perfect program for me. I as soon as I joined, I knew that this was going to be a career. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I love talking about it. So yeah.
That's incredible. And I think so many people can relate to that. We have so many jobs, and in today's day and age in particular, we're always looking forward at what we want to do to feel fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
And there's a balance between finding the right job for you and having that job fit your needs and your lifestyle. At the same time, I think in no other day and age have we had more ability to customize a job to somebody, right? And with the level of automation that's coming forward, with the level of care that we need to take for our employees, this is, I think, a message that most businesses, who historically just said, just fill it up with workers and they'll do what we want based on our own procedures, are now having to start thinking about building jobs that fit the lifestyles of a very, a diverse workplace, which is excellent. And I think will be very rewarding. And probably most of these companies will end up being a lot better for it and probably more profitable long term. Now, you probably have many misconceptions, though, because when you're walking into a workplace as an employer, there's like a barrier. There's a guard that's put up whenever someone comes in, because although we all want the best for our employees, there's still like a fear that, are we doing something wrong? Are we going to get told on, how do we deal with the misconceptions in the workplace of the fact that health and safety is actually more profitable for your business if done right?
I think there are some really good examples of companies that do it really, really well. And again, it's all about prevention. So if we can prevent a worker from getting injured on the job or having some sort of occupational disease that will put them out of work, number one, you have to deal with a claim as an employer, which no employer likes to deal with claims or injured workers, right? It's more paperwork. the worker unfortunately is now out of work, and that's reputation for that company. So spending a little bit of money, really, we are a drop in the bucket. That's what I tell my clients. We're sort of a drop in the bucket, and how we can work with the company to at least create a program or procedures or do some sort of environmental sampling at their site, get some really good information, and create a program where their workers are more satisfied. They don't have employee turnover. They are in a healthy work environment and not being exposed to chemicals or biological hazards at their workplace. It is quite profitable for those companies, and I see that through firsthand experience. So
What are some of the most common problems that you see when you walk into a workplace? I assume that you're doing probably a lot of industrial based businesses, but maybe some others as well.
the biggest hazard that we see a lot of, and that's sort of ubiquitous in any workplace, is noise. It's something that we get exposed to at work, and something we might get exposed to on our way to work or outside of work. If, for example, we're going to a concert or we're listening to our music really, really loud on the way to and from work. But that is probably the most common hazard we see. And like I said, and also, like you mentioned, it's not necessarily always industrial facilities. I actually did a research project through my master's program about Toronto nightclubs and restaurants and how loud it is. And I think it was like 105 decibels, where if it was an industrial facility, those workers would be in a hearing conservation program. They would have to wear earplugs at work. So there's sort of a misconception about how industrial facilities only have these types of hazards, and that's not true at all. There's great examples here, even at the winery, where there's some noisy equipment that we've done testing on. So it really is everywhere. The prevention is really quite easy. And again, who really wants to be in their retirement with noise-induced hearing loss as a result of their job? No, thank you. I don't want that. So
That's so funny, and you're right. I mean, you recently came and did some audio levels testing at the
yeah.
winery, and when you came and you did that, I had been traveling a bit, and I was thinking about all the components of my life and how noise is integrated. For instance, I was flying, I think, during that time. I was on an airplane, and I was thinking, do the stewardesses, should they be wearing ear protection? And like, should all the passengers on the airplane be wearing something? And so there are so many components of our lives, both at work and away from work,
For sure.
where this type of thing can make a big difference. Now, what are some of the other things that you like to focus on in terms of different health management programs that people don't think about, similar to this?
Yeah. So a lot of work that we do we're really focused on chemicals and industrial facilities that have high volume chemicals that workers are exposed to every day. So a good example of that are cancer causing agents. So again, with a cancer causing agent, or carcinogen is what they typically call it, under WorkSafe BC regulation, a company that owns any types of these cancer causing agents needs to have a program in place. Number one, does it have to be there? Like, can I substitute it for a less hazardous material that my employees can work with? So that's the best way, right? Like, instead of kind of reducing our exposure, can we completely eliminate it, right? That's ideal step one. Step two is, well, okay, if we have to have this chemical on site, which a lot of facilities, you have to have it because it's part of their production, can we reduce that exposure to as low as reasonably achievable? And how can we do that? So that's what I like to focus on. It's those long-term exposures that, yes, again, those chemicals might not cause an effect when a person breathes it in once throughout their lifetime, But, if their lungs are exposed to this carcinogen for 20 years or even 10 years in their career, what are the detrimental effects that would happen maybe 20 years from now? So when I like to focus and go into a facility, I like to focus on things that could cause disease to a person's lungs, to a person's internal organs, and then to their skin. So those are my 3 top things I look for. And cancer-causing agents are typically the ones that WorkSafe BC really focuses on and wants to minimize because, again, they don't want to see people exposed to that, just like I don't. And employers shouldn't either.
I'm curious if there are some of these carcinogens, sorry for butchering the name, at home that people aren't aware of.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and commercial products are not really well understood. It's not like when you're an employer, you get a safety data sheet when things show up at sort of a facility that's an employer would own. You can go to Home Depot or go to Canadian Tire and sometimes pull these things off the shelf. And a lot of the time what we've seen, and there are some awful stories where someone will mix a couple chemicals, a super power cleaning agent that they have created, but now have created chlorine gas. And without proper ventilation, say you're in a bathroom, you don't open the windows, you don't turn your ventilation fan on, that person can succumb, for example, to an injury. We hear of those stories all the time, and we hear a lot about other stories that happen at the workplace. I mean, confined space entries are a huge one where unfortunately we see individuals who succumb to some sort of occupational disease or untimely death. Like no one wants to be in that situation as a person who knows that person as well as an employer.
I can imagine things like painting in confined areas, a lot of cleaning chemicals for sure. Certainly, even within the winery environment, there's a very unfortunate incident a few years ago where a winemaker passed out because of high concentration levels of CO2. And actually at the time was leaning over a tank, fell into the tank of wine. And unfortunately them and someone who tried to save them both succumbed to the CO2, passed out and passed away. But it's so serious, right? And I think in our general lives, we think we're safe when we're not there at work. There's nobody checking up on us. So I'm definitely going to check on some of the chemicals in my own closet when I get home. What's the worst thing you've ever seen on a job site?
There have been a couple, to be honest. For me, it's the hardest thing that I see that sometimes is really difficult to kind of pull the person out of it is quite literally actually is confined space entry. It's kind of like what you mentioned. There have been, I have had the fortunate reality to not see these things firsthand, but have worked on investigations where workers, again, go into a tank without proper hazard assessment, don't understand the hazards, and then may have passed out inside that confined space. They've been pulled out, with the proper rescue. But again, it's really that hazard identification and the recognition that we really focus on. That's where our business lies. We want to help companies understand their hazards and understand how to prevent that. So I would say that's probably typically the worst thing that I've seen. Now, there have been some close runner-ups. I've seen some events where we have had companies that have come on to sites with really young and sort of temporary workers, again, who may not speak good English, like I said, don't understand the hazards. They're being told to do work and work in these work environments that they don't understand and again don't understand those hazards. So it really is kind of educating those workers, having the proper programs in place to really prevent that, and to prevent them from again working for them to understand that this is normal. That is not normal. It's kind of like my mom at the cookie factory. It's like, well, should she have thought that was normal? And she didn't. That's why she left. But there were a lot of people that were okay and willing to deal with that type of work environment. And we see that all the time. I see a lot of workers who come to me and they go, well, I've been doing this work for 20 years like this. How come my employer hasn't done anything to prevent this exposure? Asbestos is a great example. Another one is crystalline silica. It's essentially asbestos's cousin, where people are being exposed to it. Everyone knows the hazards about asbestos. They don't know the hazards about crystalline silica. And you can find that on construction sites. You can find that in brick, in concrete, in any kind of building material. You're gonna find it. And that's another one that a lot of people at home get exposed to. They might jackhammer their driveway, for example, and don't understand that because it is such a cancer causing agent, they're exposing themselves to something that they really shouldn't be.
No, that sounds terrible. So glad to have you around to help with that.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you were awarded the top woman in safety in 2022. Congratulations, by the way. Maybe
Thank
give us a
you.
little bit of an update on that award.
Yeah, so I did get an award from the Canadian Occupational Safety company or organization. And one of the things that they highlighted, which I'm super proud of, is that it's really a lot of industrial facilities. It is a male dominated industry. We do have a lot of women that are entering that type of workforce and trades and operator types of jobs, and which is awesome. I love to see it because a lot of the places I work at, I'm often the only female that is on that site at that day. So I absolutely love to see that, but employers are not really well versed on protecting women and protecting their reproductive organs. So one of the things that I really focus on as well when I go into a site is reproductive toxins, and that was the reason why we got the award. So and I got the award was one of the things that I absolutely love is to and actually I have a story related to this. I met a woman who worked at an industrial facility. She unfortunately she asked her employer prior to getting pregnant, do I need to be worried about anything in my work environment? I'm planning to get pregnant. And they sort of brushed her off. She worked in a very sort of male dominated field at that site. And, she did get pregnant, and 3 months later, she did lose her unborn child. And, there was really no investigation to understand whether or not it was something in her workplace. And she told me at that time she was working with some reproductive hazards, so some chemicals at work. And again, we'll never really understand whether or not that can be attributed to, unfortunately, losing her child. But that's why we want to focus on that prevention. So that's a big thing that I try to advocate for, because a lot of facilities don't, or organizations don't understand that. And that's something, not necessarily as a business, but as more myself, as someone who is a woman in a very male dominated field, I try to bring light to those types of key important things that individuals and employers need to understand. Had that woman been more, more empowered to speak to her employer and really understand the hazards that she was working with, Maybe there would have been a different outcome. We aren't sure. And actually, there are very specific regulations in WorkSafe BC that if you are a woman and you want to become pregnant, your employer has to accommodate you, and they have to make sure that you're working in an environment that is safe for you and your unborn child. So that's something that like I advocate for, and that is something that I was recognized for. So
Congratulations.
yeah.
And that's a huge accomplishment in your early career. And I'm sure you're going to get many more of those. That really is so impactful to me as I think about, my wife and the work that she does in the hospital sector,
Mhm.
but also understanding that there are a variety of businesses. There's large scale businesses, there's very small businesses, all have different environments. However, it's so much more difficult, I think, as you get to the smaller sector of the businesses, to have all of this knowledge because they can't necessarily afford to have a health and safety professional on site at all times,
For
or
sure.
to have these resources. So where do these businesses go to understand their obligations, obviously, but also get the information as it comes out? Because of course it's new and there's always things coming out all the time.
Yeah, we work with a variety of companies. We work with companies that have one employee. We work with companies that have thousands of employees. So really, we can kind of scale how we work with a company to really help them understand their hazards, recognize them, and um, prevent really events from occurring. The best resource, and I absolutely say this with all my heart, is WorkSafe BC they have amazing resources. And actually, I would say out of all of the Canadian provinces, they probably have the most user friendly regulation and guideline. And yes, spending a little bit of time in your employer obligations is probably really good for you to really understand, what can I um, potentially like what gaps do I have in my company, and spending just a little bit of time on the internet to really understand what hazards may be at that site, and how you can prevent them. There's awesome guidelines. There's a lot of really good resources that WorkSafe BC has, and they're not all in English too. There's a lot of multiple languages you can call them, and they have translators as well, that can speak to maybe individuals that English isn't their first language. And then again, when those companies are ready and maybe they find a gap that they don't know how to fill, that's where we come in and kind of give them solutions, to help their company grow and create a better health and safety culture at their company.
It's so impactful when you're empowered with the information, but it is also difficult for small business owners to understand all that information. So it's great to have resources like you, and to know where to go when you need the information. Now, outside of your day-to-day job, of course, how does does it ever get weird at home when you're talking about all these safety and health components with your husband? I mean, you have to have some downtime, I assume.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I it's funny, like I am who I am at work, and then I am who I am at home. So again, not saying that I do anything that's unsafe, but I definitely like to do things that are absolutely fun. Like I'm not always this like dry and technical person. And really, Prince George is the best place to do a lot of those things. Like I mentioned, I'm from Toronto. A lot of people assume that like I'm a very much a city girl, and that I like the whole like nightlife and the people and all that kind of stuff. But oftentimes you can catch me reading a book or out doing a hike in Prince George or in the surrounding area with my dog and my husband. So absolutely, like we do a lot of things and oftentimes I do catch my husband. He's an avid woodworker, and sometimes I go into his shop and I'm like, hey, you don't have your hearing protection in. I don't want you to be deaf when we're 70 years old. And he's like, maybe I do. Yeah, we have a lot of fun at home, and he also does work for the company as well. So he does understand that we do have our hats that we wear when we're at work, and then we can take them off when we're at home. So
it's really important to note, and I think it's so cool that your husband has now come and joined you to do this mission, which is very impactful to a lot of people's lives. In the future, where do you hope to go with your company?
It's a good question. We're kind of shooting for the moon here, and we're adding services to our fleet. So right now we focus a lot on the conventional industrial hygiene sampling and programs and program writing, and we do a lot of reactive work as well. We we work with clients who they call us in sort of a frantic, and they say, can you make our problems go away? And oftentimes that's what we do, but it's a lot of work for us. And getting that 11 p.m. phone call, as much as I love to help people and will continue to do that, it leads to burnout for the both of us. So we're focusing sort of our shift on doing less of that reactive work and working with companies to create programs where we come in once a year, we do a full assessment for them, and then they have that really good information that, for example, if an officer were to come on their site, they could go, no, we've actually assessed all our hazards, and we've done a really good job showing that, number one, our employees are safe, and number two, we have the documentation to prove that. So we're sort of focusing our shift. We're kind of doing a little bit of a brand refresh, which we're super excited for, and that we're going to probably see in the new year. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for what you do. And I'm curious, for the people listening out there, if maybe they want to point their employer in your direction, or they are an employer and they want to connect with you, whether it's in Prince George or somewhere else in North America, where can they go to find you?
For sure. Our website is Exposure Control Consulting. It's all one word. .com, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. You can find me at Zainab Nelson. And funny enough, we also have a TikTok. It's called industrial.hygienist. we do a lot of like fun sciencey experiment kind of things. Like, we work with a lot of equipment, and we like showing people what types of equipment we work with. So you can follow us on there and kind of see some of the fun stuff we do. We do a lot of technical work, but yes, we do some fun stuff with some meters and noise meters and all that kind of good stuff. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm definitely going to follow you on TikTok, and we'll put those in the show notes as well. Zainab, thank you so much for coming in. I learned a lot today. I do every single time we talk. It's been a real pleasure. Congratulations on all your success. Really looking forward to what you do with your company in the future. And that's the end of this week. So until next week, thank you very much, and cheers.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to You Sip, I Sip. Please hit the 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you'd like to learn more about Northern Lights Winery, text us at 604-670-4046 or visit us on social media at Northern Lights Winery.